I'm so excited to for everyone to meet Lauren of Love. She helps women just become their best selves. That's like the only way I could put it. And she's been one of our best partners at Joy for over a year, right, Lauren? Oh,
It's my
almost.
year anniversary was
Oh,
actually like 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
okay. Divine timing, friends.
Yeah.
This is so
It's so
great.
cool.
Yeah, and if you follow us on Instagram, you know that Lauren has had so much success with
Yeah.
GLP-1s, and I'm gonna let Lauren take it away. And everyone put where they're from in the chat, and we'll get started.
Hi, you guys. What's up? I gave Riley the little assignment before we started. She's like, "Well, here's your bio. This is what I'm gonna say." And I was like, "No, just introduce me however you want to." Because I think it's important we make this experience as like candid and as connected and down to earth as possible. And we also have Katie on the line, which is super exciting. And so I know Riley just introduced her at the start. Do you want me to just rock us and take us where we're gonna go today, or do we need to pause to say hi to
Yeah,
Katie?
Katie, thank you for hopping on. Katie can introduce herself really quick, but everyone probably
Yeah,
knows her already. She's the best.
I'm so happy to be here, Lauren. I'm so happy to see you. You are glowing. I'm Katie. I'm the founder of Joy. I'm so excited to hear from Lauren. I have my own story of, feeling really bad and honestly just feeling like my body was not working the way it should, and really taking care of myself and owning my own health journey, and using things that we do like the labs and peptides and hormone therapies changed my life in such a drastic way that I felt like I had come across some like secret that women just didn't know about. And so that's why I started Joy, to share that, because I don't, ultimately I just hate seeing women suffer, like suffer to try to make something happen, or suffer to try to do these things. And I feel like you see women all the time just like running into a wall and trying so hard and it doesn't work. And so yeah, Joy is here to help educate and to provide access to things that were life changing for me. So that's it for me. And thank you so much for being here, Lauren, and sharing your story.
Yeah, of course. I feel a little emotional actually because it was like, yeah, a year and a month ago that I had a conversation with Katie. And um, I'm just so you guys know, I don't know how many of us are familiar with each other in this group. Um, and I'll ask about that in a minute. But if you don't know me, I'm very like, keep me out of the medical system. Like, I do not want to be taking anything that was built in a lab. I'm like, very anti-pharmaceutical, which I'll talk more about in this conversation. So having the call with Katie, I was really like reserved when we first started to talk. And then when I heard her story and I started to really be honest about my concerns and ask the right questions, which you guys are all here to do today, I felt so confident that this was a really great decision for me. And so my intention in this journey is to really just share my experience because I am such a big advocate of like the way this has given, I'm gonna cry, like the way this community and these people have given me my life in a new way. And I know how hard it is to be that woman that's really struggling with your wellness and wanting to feel good in your body and being told by doctors, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. Like that is, and I'll share my story, a big part of my path. So I'm so excited to be here. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna play. We'll answer all your questions. I'll probably direct a lot of it to Katie, but if I share anything in my journey here today that you would like to talk about or you have questions about to follow up with, please don't hesitate to use the chat. And so I want to start with that today if we can. While I wipe my tears and get into a high vibration, um, I would just love to know first to gauge all of your energy. How many of you follow me personally, Lauren of Love on Instagram, and how many of you are new? And I'm asking that because you can type follow or you can type new, just so I can really feel the energy of what we're working with. And I want to make sure I'm meeting all of your needs and sharing what I should share. Cool. Oh, Debbie's in my heal program. Hi, Debbie.
Aw.
Yeah, girl. Yeah, this is incredible. Lots of new people. Amazing. So I will say that for those of you who follow me, you've been watching my transformation for quite a while. because I share so openly about my journey on Instagram. And for those of you who are new, um, how I used to look is very different. And so I've been through this really radical physical transformation in my life where I feel more healthy and more vibrant than ever before. And for those of you who follow me, you understand how drastic this journey has been for me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I think when we look at like why people are here, a big part of it is like how comfortable and aligned you feel in your body, right? Wanting to feel connected to your body, wanting to feel like you have this good relationship with this vessel. And for me, my vessel carried so much inflammation for so many years that I felt really disconnected as a woman. I felt really unsexy. I felt really like afraid to be um, even looking at my body because I knew when I was looking at my body, I was seeing all of this, not me, this inflammation, this fatigue, this toxicity. I was about 70 pounds heavier than I am today. A couple of months ago, I was able to celebrate that victory with a breast augmentation and a tummy tuck to really like release all of this extra skin that I had been carrying. I was severely overweight for a long time in my life, and I thought for a while that that was related to chronic illness. I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease, Babesia, Borrelia, anaplasmosis, and that was where my journey to peptides began when I was physically really struggling and couldn't figure out what to do. I took a natural approach with peptide therapy and healed so many chronic conditions or aspects of my chronic condition. However, I still was feeling like something wasn't right. I had really abused my body for a long time, alcohol, pharmaceuticals. I had mental illness diagnosis when I was younger and was on a lot of pharmaceutical medication. And all of that, I was lethargic. I was tired. I was fatigued. My hormones were off. The damage that I experienced in my body because of the human reality of our world with toxins and stress and pressure, working heavy jobs, not taking care of myself. No matter how much I exercised and no matter how much I changed my diet, my body was not changing. And I was getting so frustrated. I was doing all the inner work and that was having some progress. But I knew that chemically in my body, something was not operating the way that it needed to be. And I would go to doctors and I would get labs done and I would ask these questions and they'd say, "Oh, you're fine. Everything's normal." When I had my call with Katie, something she said to me that really stuck with me, um, I don't know if I'm going to word this correctly, but it's something along the lines of like, common is like not really what we deserve. We deserve our vitality, right? And so when you get these labs, and she can talk about it too, the labs that Katie offered me through working with Joy were so much more comprehensive and had so many different approaches to the data of my body that I never had seen before that I was finally getting answers, right? Like, oh, that chronic inflammation you have really low markers of this, and magnesium can contribute to that. Or what about the fact that you're really tired all the time? Your B12 is on the floor. If I had not gotten those labs, I have no idea where my body would be today. In comes GLP-1s. So I know we're all here because we're curious about joy, right? But we're also curious about GLP-1s specifically. And so I would just love to ask for all of you here, what maybe we can talk about like the curiosity that's present on that and just ask like, are there concerns? Are there questions that are coming up? And maybe we can just hold space for you guys to express yourself in the chat around this. And as I talk, I can pick up on those answers and really share what I know in my knowledge. And then Katie can also come in and answer some questions as well as we move through. I'll maybe leave the more in-depth ones for the end of this as well. So yeah, so my GLP-1 journey. So I got my labs and then I was feeling so excited and I'm like, I finally have answers. And one thing that I'm going to say, which is really important, is that I'm very much recognizing that in today's world, wellness is a privilege and it's a costly one, right? And that can feel really challenging for people because we're inspired to, invest in all of these other things, right? Like retirement and make sure you have a good 401k and make sure you're putting money here and you're putting money there. For me, I found that when I recognized that my now me deserved an investment so that I could live longer and feel healthier. I knew that for me, this wasn't just about GLP-1, right? And so it was about actually understanding what are all the moving parts here. Because a lot of the Western world is like, oh, this one thing is going to solve your problems. Just do this one thing. But it's really a lot of different things, right? And so with GLP-1, I started to notice when I was going on this journey, starting everything at once. I did the supplements, I did the peptides, I did the vitamins, whatever my labs needed, I met it. And GLP-1 was one of those things. My labs showed me that I had really weird relationship in my markers with A1C, I believe is what it's called, right?
Mhm.
And so I was never diagnosed diabetic, but when I'm getting my labs and I'm being educated about this concept called pre-diabetes, that's when I fell down a rabbit hole. I started to listen to Dr. Tina's podcast. I started to really educate myself about what GLP-1s were. And the more I learned, the more I actually felt safe and felt like what I was intuitively called to do was right. For me, when you learn about GLP-1, I think a lot of you have probably studied, but I just want to share a little bit about it. You know, your body naturally produces peptides in general. Your body produces all these different peptides. Insulin is a peptide. But over time, as you age, the peptides of all these different aspects of your body start lowering down and working less well, right? In addition, if you have ever done any research on peptides, you'll find a really interesting study where they talk about women who have had severe traumas are altered in their relationship to certain peptides in the body as well. So this was very eye-opening for me, and it made me realize like I can do all the inner work, I can focus on eating well, but if my vehicle is not operating, it's like putting really great oil in a shit machine, right? I needed to start making changes to my body with the right peptide shifts, and GLP-1 was one of those. I started low, right? And I was working with Tirzepatide at the time, right? This was a GLP-1 that I was working with very deeply. And working low, moving my body, having healthy supplements, eating better, it was an immediate shift for me personally. And I continue to take a lower dose of the peptides that I work with. And for me, like when I look at my path, I can see that there was no negative side effect for me in this process. I know some of you have asked questions about it and this concept of cycling. So maybe what we can do is just start to jump into some of those conversations of question and see where it takes us. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Thank you
Katie, do you
so
want to
much,
say
by the way,
anything?
for that. Well, yeah, I think we've got some really good questions, and I think a lot of them have to do with, how do you maintain, how do you get off? You mentioned you're doing, going to continue on a microdose for a while. Do you have any like personal thoughts on how long, or if you'll try to get off, or
I
what you're
do.
doing there?
Yeah, I've been talking with my husband about it because he's a real geeky researcher and he is very happy with his process with working with blokes. And so he said, working with the peptide, it's been a full year. The brain scientifically takes a lot longer to remember the size of your body. And that's why a lot of people yo-yo diet back and forth because it takes a longer time for the brain to register, like, this is my normal body. So for me, I have a 2-year plan. I'm going to stay on these medications and slowly start to taper down until I'm at my 2-year mark. And then at my 2-year mark, the way that I see myself working with this is cycling and using the peptide on and off as a cycle syncer. Now, that is not something that I'm not a doctor, so I'm not telling you what to do, but that's just my experience. I don't find GLP-1 addicting at all in the sense of like being in right relationship emotionally with it is really important. I see GLP-1 as one of my many tools. I don't see it as my savior, right?
Mm.
And so if you have that relationship with what you're doing, you can recognize that you're in right relationship with it and you're not chasing more, more, more. That's, yeah, really important to see things that way.
So powerful. I love the way you describe it, which is totally different than how a doctor would describe it. But I will say you're totally right that it's one of the tools that you can use. And I'm glad you mentioned cycling because in peptides in general, that is something that most doctors and we at Joy and Blokes will recommend is cycling peptides. Um, for a couple different reasons. One is just because when when you get off, then you'll be able to know what works. You mentioned you started on a bunch of things at once. In reality, you want to know what's working for you and what's not. So it's great to start with one thing and go, how is this working? And, some peptides you'll notice right away, it'll make changes, and sometimes it'll take a month or two. So it's really great to try it for a few months. We would recommend in general, 3 to 6 months, and then you can take a month off and say, like, how is this feeling for me? Is this right? Do I want, and in that time, you also are giving your receptors a little bit of a break. So you're just not reliant on that forever too. So that's kind of the reason why you want to cycle. And the other thing I will say about peptides is they are by nature very regenerative. So there's a lot of noise on GLP-1s, and a lot of people say you'll get off right away and gain all the weight back. And for some people that for sure that could be possible. There's a lot that goes into it. But in general, again, peptides are regenerative. So if you do it the right way, and if you work on changing your habits and your mental part, as you so eloquently bring up how important that part of it is too, then you absolutely should be able to get off and not gain back a bunch of weight, and lead a healthier life where your body is now used to a different way of eating, of processing, of being able to use your food as energy, which is, when we look at America now, it's basically 70 to 80% of people have issues with that. That's the basic, you're going to eat. Is your body using that, or is it storing it? And so most of us have those issues, unfortunately, and that's just from all the different inputs, right? Um, but again, like, this is supposed to help you actually use that food as fuel and heal that system.
Hmm. Yeah, and for me personally too, like I'll just from my own experience of taking the peptides in the early days, um, it was really actually very confusing for me to have a relationship with life where I wasn't hearing all of these constant food thoughts. That was one of the biggest changes that I noticed immediately in the sense of like, wow, I'm not thinking about food 24/7. And I used to think that was like an addictive mind issue, but I changed something in my body and that's altering my thought. And that was just really an incredible experience. And I think really understanding that studying that and having the opportunity to experience that for a long period of time is a beautiful gift that you can sustain as you slowly come off of the medication because you know what that feels like. I
Mhm.
think just to explain, like being on it for a certain period of time, that's what it's allowed me to really study is like, wow, this is what normal feels like when I'm in my body and I'm not
Right.
dysregulated. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I agree, and I love that. And there's the mental, and then there's also the physical part where too, like, our bodies are basically addicted to sugar, right? And so being able to break that pattern is what will help you then get off it and being like, okay, I no longer am I'm no longer in a need of just re ramping and replacing that sugar. So that's why it's so important to, change those habits and eat the
Hmm.
protein and have the fiber and really make healthy whole food choices and get away from the processed stuff, because the processed stuff is what tricks our mind, and it's what messes up our body to say, I need more of that. And that's where you get addicted, where it's like those chemicals are basically throwing off that natural process.
Mm. Yeah, we have another question too I wanted to ask you to speak on. Um, these a couple of people are saying like I'm on it for this amount of time, I lost this amount of weight, can I stop taking it? And that's where I'm just like, let's respond to that, but I can't.
Yeah, so I would again go with how whatever is feeling right for you. So I would suggest titrating down on your dose slowly. So you can slowly start lowering your dose. You can also go, if you're doing it weekly, you could do every 10 days, then go to 2 weeks and kind of just slowly start titrating and pay attention to how you're feeling and how that feels for you. And then again, that's where you want to really tighten up and say, like, what am I eating? Am I making sure to focus on the healthy whole foods, the protein, the fiber, get rid of the processed stuff. And that's how you get off. That's how you wean off safely. And then tons of questions on like microdosing specific. Is there a specific microdose? Microdose has not been studied with GLP-1. There's no specific microdose protocol, but really all we're talking about when we say that is what dose is right for you. So, initially when the branded meds came out, they had just very specific dosing, and they still do. They've kind of made some upgrades so you can get smaller amounts now, but when you look at taking what dose is right for you, and you're able to lower that based on how your body is feeling and working, that is it can work wonders. A lot of people had the bad side effects when they were taking too high of a dose.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't want to do that, obviously. First of all, you don't want to lose weight too quickly either. Like, there's a healthy way to do it to keep it off. So these GLP-1s are not to make you not eat and lose weight quickly. Like, that's not the goal. It's to, again, help fix that process and help fix what's going on in your body so that your body reacts to food and sugar and in the proper way. So doing it at a smaller dose, and incorporating all the other good things into your lifestyle will help help you maintain it. So in
Yeah.
terms of microdose, it's best that's why you want to work with a clinician to and really work through what's right for you. It's crazy. Some people react like this and they're like, yeah, that's great. And some people, everyone's a little bit different. Some people can take a couple of months to like see that first weight
Mhm.
loss. And so dosing is really dependent on the individual.
Yeah, and I think too, I learned in my experience that like dosing, listening to your body is such a healthier approach than dosing to get fast results with time, right? Like that's really important. When I was studying with and listening to all of Dr. Tina's podcasts, she was talking about how like the side effects of like diarrhea and vomiting and nausea, if that's happening, you're on too high a dose, right? Like
Absolutely.
that's not a side effect of the medication, it's a side effect of taking too much, you know? So it's important to be mindful of that. Yeah, and listening to your like a lot of us got here because we're not listening to our bodies. So like this
Yeah.
journey should be that way. Jackie had a question too I want to speak to. She said she feels like she's cheating, that she needs to work harder for results. And I want to speak to this because it's such an interesting paradigm. You know, I've been through a lot of trauma in my life, and my life was always hard. Okay. And at some point began to associate my worthiness to feel good about something based on how hard it was for me. Like if I worked really hard to overcome something, now I can feel really proud of myself if I earned it, right? That earning, that subconscious entrainment of like you have to earn love. You have to earn praise. You have to earn acceptance. You have to earn the permission to feel good about yourself. And so when I started this journey, what I realized is that those stories were the entire reason I was not happy in my life, right? And I had to really actually learn to believe that I was worthy of support, to believe that my body is deserving of being supported, and to also believe that, like, you know what? Things were hard for me for a long time. They don't need to be hard anymore. Like, it doesn't need to be hard for me to get results. It can also feel really good and easy. So, just to say that for anybody who has that conditioning, because in my work, I was sharing a lot about my GLP-1 journey, and I learned very early on that a lot of people have opinions about what you do for your body. And it's so surprising to me, the messages I get from people who are like, hey, thank you so much for talking about GLP-1. I've been on it for a year and I never told my husband. Like, oh my gosh, like, why are we so ashamed of these things to want to do stuff for our body that makes us feel more beautiful or more healthy or more connected to our body? And Anybody who has an opinion about that is just not looking at themselves. So I just want to drop that there as like I relate um, to all the shame around it. It's very interesting. The shame around GLP-1. I don't understand um, why we
That
do
is such an interesting topic. Like
that.
there's been so much backlash, and I do love Dr. Tina's podcast, and we'll definitely, Riley, if you can find those and drop those in there,
They're
Dr.
so
Tina.
good.
She's really great. And also we have Dr. Melissa Losky that just joined us, and
Sorry.
Lene Mullane, who also joined us.
Hi
So we
there.
got double power here. Well, thank you, ladies. So Dr. Losky is our medical director, and Lene is our head of clinical development and new product development, and is a naturopathic doctor by trade. So we can ask all the technical questions now too. So
Amazing. So good.
a lot
It's
of people
great.
wondering, like, how do you get off of it? Talking about, are there any long-term side effects? Um, what else? Talking about microdosing, all that kind of stuff. So you can see in
Well, there's a lot of questions about people trying to get off microdosing. What if someone only wants to lose 10 pounds? Yeah, this is like, take it away, ladies. These are all the logistical questions that your magic is so fully supportive for.
Still safe for 10 pounds only. I was that person when I started it. I I'm a big believer in microdosing, which is, here's how I'll loosely describe microdosing or talk about microdosing. Generally, that's the lowest dose possible for effectiveness if we're not looking for weight loss, and or the lowest dose that avoids side effects and still gets us to benefit.
can you
Oh,
Yeah, I wanted to say, could you talk about the other benefits besides? Because I've had some people, so I've seen people on it that are like, okay, my inflammation went down, or the bloating, that extra, like, I don't know,
Yep.
5 pounds.
Yep.
So can you talk about how that works?
Sleep, joint pain. I've had some people who just general like brain fog will go away as well. Anybody with IBD, IBS type symptoms can
yeah.
be huge from that perspective. It's going to play a role in inflammatory conditions. So PCOS is one where gals will see a lot of benefits, which then goes to that downward kind of domino effect of, if you're a female who's infertile because your insulin levels are high and you've got all this metabolic inflammation, these are great places where GLP can help support that. And it's I'll describe it. It's you no longer fighting against your body. Like, you can diet, you can exercise. If you're a gal with PCOS, like, the metabolic inflammation that is already going to exist is a challenge. So quit beating yourself up and lowering your own personal self-love and thinking it's something with you rather than a disease or condition, that this is a medication that helps support you.
Mm, I love that.
I'll also say when I get a lot of women who are interested, particularly women who are interested, they're already in a calorie deficit, and that is not contributing to their weight loss. That is not helping. So the microdosing is really that anti-inflammatory insulin balance piece of it that just tips it over. It's not the caloric restriction or kind of slowing gastric emptying. It's really that lower inflammation piece that really tips it over so they can see those results.
Interesting. I'm also curious, and Lene, maybe you could talk to this too, because we've talked about how I've seen a lot of patients, like some people, it's like right away, this works. And then other people, it's like, this isn't working. We got to try a different one. Um, and in my head, I feel like that could mean something else is maybe not working. And that's why it might be good to like look at a lab or look at, what other things affect how GLP-1s work.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect example in all things. GLP-1s are no exception, that everyone is personal and their healthcare journey is a personalized one. So may work for somebody may not for another. What may be, somebody's sweet spot for a dose may be way too much for another. So it's really incredible to
Mhm.
fine tune it. That's why I love with Joy having a person like a health coach that can walk along and really, you don't have to figure it out. They can help you and guide you on that. But absolutely, there's pieces where if we're starting with a GLP-1 and we're not seeing a shift and we're kind of increasing our dose a little bit faster than expected, then doing something like a lab where we can look at your thyroid, we can look at your cortisol, we can look at inflammatory markers, and really get to the root cause of it. And we can also look at insulin levels as well, which I think is something that's not commonly tested, which is incredible to look at and really a great way to monitor, again, for microdosing, because maybe if you hit your goal weight, that could be something we microdose just to manage that insulin and blood sugar level. But it's a layered approach, and you're a person, we've never met a person like you. You're a new person in our, every time we meet somebody. So we really go at it with fine tuning along your journey to make sure that we're getting to the root cause and helping you out.
Can you ladies also speak to just something that I feel like is important, talking about this concept of how this particular peptide has an impact on the thyroid and also the womb? Because for a lot of people who have PCOS, they see these really big changes by working with the GLP-1s. So a couple of people are asking about that, if we could talk about it too.
Ooh, okay, so we could probably do a whole 20 minutes on thyroid alone and GLPs. Um, so I like to think of things in a triangle, and the base of that triangle is going to be cortisol, insulin levels. Above that is thyroid, and then above that are your sex hormones. And this is kind of that hormone, what I'll loosely call a hormone hierarchy. So when we're on a GLP, we're targeting those insulin levels, which can also improve cortisol levels, but can then also impact thyroid levels. Now, generally speaking, there are some thyroid conditions where GLPs are not appropriate because it can increase your risk, but it's an extremely rare thyroid condition. So a gal or guy who has hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, you're still generally candidates as long as the provider, through your medical history and conversation, deems that appropriate. But and thyroid also has a role with gut health, what we eat, how we eat. So anybody who has thyroid disease, you're still potentially a GLP candidate, but you're going to want to make sure that you're having that conversation with a provider to make sure it's adequate for you. But I know my own personal rule is I won't treat somebody who has hypothyroidism that is uncontrolled. Like I had a gal in my office the other day, her TSH was 65. She may want a GLP, but we're going to correct that thyroid before we even consider having that GLP conversation for her.
Yeah, it's interesting for me because in my experience, when I got my labs, I had what was clinically diagnosed as a hypothyroidism condition, and my numbers actually started to change and improve. They weren't incredibly severe that a regular doctor would identify them, but they were there. And the GLP-1 did have a huge shift on the numbers that I was seeing in my reports over the years. So that I think is pretty cool to note as well. Um, that it makes changes, right? It has an impact, which is really beautiful.
Well, and I don't know if for anybody else who's been on the GLP before, I generally live under the 70-30, 80-20 rule. I've got kids at home. It's not going to be perfect all the time. There's nights where we're going to go out to dinner or it's going to be a drive-through. But generally for me personally, when I'm on a GLP, I'm craving the more wholesome foods, which as you correct diet and you're craving those more wholesome foods, or you're snacking on the processed food less, you're going to naturally improve your thyroid because your diet's improved too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that also too, in like naturally craving the whole-based foods brings up kind of this other point of like muscle loss concern as well for people who are taking GLP-1s. I personally saw muscle mass increase because I was lifting weights and I was eating a ton more protein. So maybe we can just hold space to talk about that concept of muscle loss as well.
I'll just talk about just experience with working with patients on that. This is a very common piece, and it's actually amazing to watch providers that you may see in kind of social media space where initially were incredibly anti-GLP-1s because of the weight loss or the muscle loss, kind of increase in sarcopenia. Now have, after a year since it's been out a little bit more, have actually changed their tune. They're like, okay, yeah, if you're just taking it, sitting back, not doing anything, of course you will see that. But if you're actively working against losing muscle by eating enough protein and by doing resistance training, you're gonna help protect as much mass as you can. And that's where I think it's people have this misconception. I'll get patients come in and say, I don't want to tell anybody. They think it's an easy way out. It's not easy because you still got to do all the things, but now your appetite's a little less. And I'm telling you, you got to eat, a, up to like a gram of protein per ideal body weight. Now your appetite's less. That's going to be hard to do, or, even focusing on things like resistance training if you haven't. But anytime, just a reminder, the GLP-1 itself isn't causing the muscle loss. It's anytime you lose weight quickly. So I think there's a whole bunch of pieces by working with a coach to make sure that that weight loss is going in a way that is, a gradual weight loss. We're not trying to see 20 pounds in a week, even though some people, it looks like that on social media. We want it to still be a gradual space. We're not nutrient depleted. We want to make sure that, yes, if it's lowering your caloric intake by slowing gastric emptying, you're still supporting yourself with nourishment. We can talk about ways that, okay, your appetite's less. Let's get protein, but instead of focusing on three segmented meals, let's mix it together, so you have a stir fry, add some spinach in there, making sure you're not nutrient depleted, but definitely focus will always be actively, and it has to be a definite active piece to contribute to make sure you're preserving that at all costs. And that's a behavioral piece that, is supported through health coaches, but definitely, and then through supplementation, like protein and creatine and those things that can pair along with that.
And I think it
And
speaks.
peptides. We have Semorolin. Semorelin's a great peptide. I just want to bring that up to pair with that, or if you're on testosterone, to kind of help preserve that muscle as you're losing weight.
And I think it speaks to the importance of personalized dosing. Like the muscle loss I see are in patients who, okay, I was on this dose, and then month 2, I went up to the next level, next tier of dosing, and then the next tier, but nobody's stopping to have the conversation of, oh, you lost 10 pounds this week, but I moved you up to 50 units of semaglutide and you haven't eaten in a week. Like it's making sure that you're having those personalized conversations and monitoring the weight loss as well too.
I absolutely love. So Nicole and Claire have the same question, and it's kind of an interesting one. So using this as a preventative and maybe feeling better overall to prevent side effects from changing hormones as you approach menopause
That's a good question.
is.
How much time you got?
Well, so here, yes, I do love it, but I will tell gals all day long, you are never going to diet, lift, supplement your way out of menopause. Your ovaries are going to stop producing estrogen. They're going to stop producing testosterone. You're going to lose progesterone. So can it help? Yes. But is it going to potentially replace your need for that hormonal support in the future? I'm a big proponent of no. But some of the joint pain, some of the inflammation, the natural insulin resistance that happens as a result of walking or sprinting or running your way into menopause, yes, it can help.
I mean, you'd probably say like start with HRT if you're worried about your hormones changing, address that versus just trying a GLP-1, right?
It depends. Yes, it depends on the why.
Yeah.
Why are we looking to go on the GLP in the first place? Like, so I got on my GLP 3 years ago. I'm 45. Post a hysterectomy, I was already on testosterone, already on estrogen. Diet was like nothing had changed, but the weight had crept up that 5 to 10 perimenopausal pounds. And I felt like for me, the GLP gave me my options back. Like I wasn't going to spend any more time in the gym. I was already lifting 3 times a week, and it was just the natural shifts in my body. And now I just taper my dosing down because I'm not interested in any further weight loss, but I know the longevity benefits are there. So you can pry my GLP out of my hand with my hormones when I'm dead.
I love this one too because, and it's something that I've been meaning to do, but I know Lene, this is kind of like your area. Creatine, does that help with?
Yeah.
The muscle? And I don't know if Lauren takes creatine.
I could speak to this from my experience, but yeah.
I am a huge proponent of creatine. It is definitely making its way, and for good reason. I will say it was kind of thought of as like a gym bro supplement for so long, or that's going to cause bloating. we now know you don't have to do this loading phase of 20 grams for 4 weeks anymore. You can actually 3 to 5 grams works, particularly if you do it consistently. And we are now learning, yes, you can do it post-workout to help with exercise performance. But even the days you are exercising, add it a scoop, unflavored, tastes like nothing, 3 to 5 grams in the morning to help with things like cognition, memory. There's incredible research now also on the sleep deficits and how that can affect memory and brain, and how creatine can help with that. Really, very low risk or side effects. It can get broken down into creatinine. So sometimes your creatinine levels on your kidney levels can go up a little. Doesn't mean it's hurting your kidneys, but incredibly well researched, particularly for lowering and supporting sarcopenia, which will happen to all of us typically after the age of 40, where we start to lose muscle mass at more of an accelerated rate. We do everything we can to prevent that, like taking some Oralin, maybe some testosterone, exercise, resistance training, get enough protein, and definitely add that creatine in there.
Yeah, I worked with creatine myself when I was first starting my journey of the GLP-1s. And for me, like the weight was coming off pretty quickly in the beginning, and I really wanted to make sure I was supplementing. And so I would work with creatine. What I noticed is that I need a lot less than the bottle says. Like you
Mhm.
said, it was just like just a little bit in the morning, had a huge impact for me and feeling more like I would get a feeling of just feeling a little bit stronger. I don't know if that was all in my brain, but I did feel that way. And I think there's a really strong emphasis in my experience on the importance of protein and actually taking the things that are going to help your muscles stay strong, like you guys are talking about. I think that's important just as a 36-year-old woman in general, regardless of what else I'm doing. So, yeah,
And what
most,
you're doing now is only going to help you in the future, because it's going to
yeah.
be harder to add it on. So what you're doing now
Mhm.
is just going to set you up for success.
Dr. Tina says that too. I really like her expression on that, where she talks about how muscle is your insurance policy as you age. And
Mhm.
I
Currency of life.
yes, yes, yeah, I
I,
really
I will just
appreciate
say, when it comes to muscle, somebody's like, what can I do for longevity? I'm like, muscle.
Muscle.
It's not necessarily, me about living to 120, although we want to get you there. It's about being active, and independence to me is longevity, where you can open up your own jars when you're 90, you're walking
yeah.
without a cane, you bump
Yeah,
yourself, you're not falling over.
it's
That to
important.
me is the health span that I want.
Yeah, that for me was the big reason I started working with Joy because I was in my 30 mid 30 era realizing like, oh, what I do now is going to really actually make a bigger difference for me than I'm giving it credit for. And that was when I started to prioritize all these things like lifting weights and taking GLP-1 and getting supplements and regulating my body to be as strong as it could be. There are also some logistical questions too, if we can cover some of this that's coming through.
Mhm.
Um, Asking kind of like, what do you suggest first starting with labs for things like the hormones, and then also looking at some of the questions of like, what types of labs would you represent, or how people can get started on the journey with working with you guys too? So maybe we should talk about that also.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great one for Lene. I can jump in on the HSA. So what we provide you a letter of medical necessity and an invoice so you can submit that for reimbursement. We are working on hopefully finding a processor that we can process the cards. There's some reasons on the telehealth side where that's makes it harder, but we that might be possible in the few months. But for now, we do offer you the documents that you can submit to use your HSA. And then yeah, Lene, do you have, where would you
Lab for
suggest on
labs, I
lab?
mean, yeah, personally, my favorite is on the advanced panel. That's the middle tiered one. If you're really interested in your health markers, maybe have a history of cardiovascular disease, that comprehensive can be amazing. It's got the ApoB, some homocysteine on there. Takes a little extra dive on some markers if you're concerned there. The middle one to me is at least a great starter because it's looking at thyroid. Besides just TSH, we got the full panel of your thyroid, which can really help because TSH can be in range, but if that T3 is low, which is your active thyroid hormone, it might be cause some issues there. So it looks at cortisol, it looks at your cholesterol, your lipid levels, which goes up, especially if we have hormonal issues like lower estrogen. That cholesterol can be something that goes up. So I love having a baseline there because that can be something we watch over time to see if where you are in your perimenopausal journey. It also has some other vitamin markers, which is great to look at. So I'm a huge fan of the advanced panel. Just gives us a great starting point. If you are looking to start also kind of a follow-up just for hormone piece of it, then you could do something like the complete hormonal panel, which is our initial lab. And that one's mainly looking at your hormones and kind of a CBC, CMP. To me, it's a great one to kind of manage if you're on hormone therapy. But again, as an initial starting point, especially look at that insulin, which we don't always see on hemoglobin A1C or glucose. That middle tier lab would be like advanced panel would be my sweet spot.
Yeah, that's what I ended up working with, and I really recommend it because it was so comprehensive. And the calls you guys offered too, like breaking things down and explaining like this is this number and this is what this could be creating and this is what you could might be and I'm like, "Oh, those symptoms I have, it all makes sense and it's all connected." So I think the labs are really great, but it's also like the ability to have those conversations with you guys and ask those questions and get things reviewed that really does go a long way for people to understand what's happening in their body as well.
Hmm. Melissa, would you break down there's some testosterone dosing
Yep.
questions. What
Yep.
type is best? What do you think about testing for checking your levels?
So I'm always a big proponent of labs. Everybody will always hear me say labs, 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 because just because you don't think it's a problem doesn't mean that it's not. And you don't, I'm not into just kind of going like this and saying, okay, let me guess how I can treat you. Um, so and I was shocked at 34 to find a testosterone level of 8. So it's where I become also a big personal proponent of labs because you just don't know what's there. Testosterone dosing, that's going to be so personalized, and it's going to depend on what type of testosterone you're doing. Everybody's sweet spot for testosterone is going to be different. I have gals who feel great at 250, 300. I have gals who feel great at 50 to 75. So it's about meeting somebody where they're at. And I also believe that statement is so very true. Also, when you ask me what type, currently, generally, 4 types of testosterone: orals, which are a troche or a rapid dissolve, creams, injections, and pellets. So, what type is best is the type that you're comfortable with and the type that works for you. And I will, my always one of my biggest caveats is HRT gets such a bad rap because if you try one form, let's say you try a cream of testosterone, you're like, oh my gosh, that did nothing for me. And whichever provider prescribed that for you, if they're not having a deeper conversation of other options,
Mhm.
you're gonna never know. Like I have tried all of them. I actually just tried to go back to injections 2 weeks ago. My face broke out like crazy. I look like my teenage son with acne, and I was like, okay, this is my body telling me injections are not for me. As much as I wanted to potentially go back to them, it wasn't the best option for me. So it's figuring out what works for you, and that may mean you have to try all 4 options. But figuring it out and having somebody there to support you on that journey is so critical and so key.
Huge. It's really it's everything because like along my experience, you had started talking about this in the beginning, Katie, about fine-tuning your process, right? And having the opportunity to adjust and go back and forth. That was really beneficial for me on my process as well. So, what about Jackie's comment? Did her GYN says labs are pointless because they fluctuate. I want to, that made me upset. I was like, what? My mood fluctuates. I still should like be aware of what I'm
Right.
feeling. It's so weird. That's interesting.
It's a huge topic out there. There are a ton of people. I am not in the camp who thinks that labs are pointless. Obviously, yes, your FSH, your estrogen, your progesterone levels, and even to some degree your testosterone levels are going to fluctuate. Yes, thyroid is going to fluctuate based on what you eat, what's going on. Yes, cortisol is going to fluctuate. But to Lauren's point, a baseline is great, but trends are also important. I want to know which direction is your FSH trending. You've got 2 ovaries that take turns ovulating. I want to know, is one ovary potentially working better or working less than the other? And while I can't tell you, oop, that left ovary is lazy, at least we can see patterns and trends to be able to try and figure out what do you need to do and to help support your body to feel its best.
Yeah, you gotta know your body.
Can I ask, you also said your thyroid fluctuates too, right? Your thyroid hormones, because everyone tests thyroid before they give thyroid meds, right?
Yeah, well, not everybody, but they
Not
should,
everybody does.
yes.
I mean, I guess
Generally,
I'm just there's something weird with like with estrogen and progesterone where they say don't test, but I feel like you test for everything else, so I don't. I
right.
guess I don't.
This is another line I'll use a lot for those same people, and it doesn't have as much to do with not testing, but if if me as a female, if I went into my primary care and my TSH was 100, which is basically your brain saying, how is your thyroid working? Without question, we would put somebody on thyroid support supplements, meds, levothyroxine, more than likely levothyroxine because I went to my PCP. But that same PCP and so many practitioners out there, that same gal who walks in with an FSH of 100, which is basically her body saying, I'm done, I'm in menopause. Most of the time, we're like, it's okay. Pat her on the head and just say, this is how you're supposed to feel. That shift is coming, but it shows those gaps in what we're willing to treat and what we're not always willing to treat. And we just expect women to feel this way. We wouldn't tell a guy, hey, sorry, your testosterone's 0. Just go ahead and go on through life without it.
Yeah, I got a really like wild introduction to this in my healing journey because when I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease, I was going to doctors, and there are very certain sets of complicated markers that you must qualify to be considered with Lyme. However, when I went and got my own testing and paid a lot of money out of pocket for advanced panels, I found out I had Lyme and a ton of other co-infections as well. And what I've learned through my experience with the pharmaceutical world and the doctor world is that there's a spectrum that they determine so they can decide what's insurancely covered and what is not covered. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you wouldn't benefit from certain things that could help you feel better. And that's what I've also witnessed for myself when it came to my thyroid, when it came to aspects of my hormonal cycle, and my hormone levels. I think going out of your regular world that way to go through panels that are like a more advanced and more personalized is so beneficial in so many ways because of that. So I want to place that there as a thought as well, because you get treatment for what you're feeling versus like, oh, this is covered, this is not. Am I making sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Versus like looking at like a normal range for
Right.
a certain amount of the population where you're like,
Right.
actually, like I might feel better, you don't want to compare yourself all the time to what someone else's normal is. Might be different for you.
Absolutely. And I was told by doctors that a lot of things were normal, but they were normal range, not normal for me, you
Right.
know, and that's
And
important.
for you on your journey too, Lauren, like with the Lyme, it requires a practitioner who believes in chronic Lyme because so many are educated that that's not a real thing.
Right. Right.
And I
And
think
with
this is where
hormones
joy
too.
also is a really incredible thing. I always tell my patients, it's important, obviously, have a primary care that can see you, listen to do your blood pressure, heart, do a physical exam, skin check. But you want to be a boring patient to them. They're looking in range out, they're looking for cute things. Have a tribe and a support system in between,
Yes.
or people that you talk to way more frequently, and look at a more optimal dosage or like optimal ranges to fine tune. And so you can have a team, when it comes to your health care.
It's so
It's a privilege.
important.
I
Huge.
love that. This is wonderful. Do we have any more questions or do we feel like
Yeah, I was looking through them before. I
feel like
think we
we've done a pretty
covered,
great job?
yeah, I think we
That
covered
was a lot
everything.
of good stuff.
This was so cool. I feel like it's so interesting to run a webinar like this and I have like three beautiful, scientifically educated ladies on an amazing panel who have so much knowledge and wisdom to share. And yeah, I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to hear you guys answer those questions and to learn myself in new ways. That was really cool. So thank you.
Mhm.
And yeah, I was honored to jump on with all of you guys and to share my story and my experience working with Joy. And I'm a joy advocate till the cows come home, man.
We
Like,
love you,
oh
Lauren.
my
You are
God.
you are a bright light. I guess let's definitely before we jump answer Pamela's question on melatonin because I do see that maybe that was her that asked that on the survey as well. That's been asked a couple of times. So melatonin, do you guys have thoughts on that?
Lene, do you want to take it?
You could definitely, if you want to interact with it, maybe with hormones, but Again, everybody is very different. So it depends on what sleep issue you have, what you're trying to assess, why you're trying to use it. And then dose is important. So sometimes we use a larger dose than we actually need. Form's important. So it's not, I'm a little what where I know it's going to be annoying because I'm not going to be a yes or a no. I'm more of a it depends. But typically a lower dose, if you're going to use it more frequently, something like 1 milligram is really all you need for consistent use. You don't need to go super high. Again, it's depending on the use that you're using it for. If you're a little bit groggy, it needs to go a little bit lower. So it all depends on what you're trying to use and how your body responds to it.
I'm going to align 100% with Lene here on that one. And the medical science is changing on melatonin. Like every time I turn around, like you'll see research studies that show it's a super great from a preventative standpoint for cancer. And then you'll see, ooh, in the next sentence, it shuts down HGH and potentially hormone levels. So there's so much mixed data out there that, and for both Joy, Blokes, your provider, to the root cause. Why do we need melatonin in the first place? Is it because our cortisol levels are high that we're not sleeping? Like, let's figure out why we feel like we need the melatonin in the first place.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. I 100% resonate and support and agree. Yeah, get to root cause. And like if you guys really are feeling inspired by this conversation, there's a beautiful coupon code I know Riley shared with you guys where you can get a discount off of your labs. That advanced lab panel is a game changer. I get it every couple of months. I love it. My husband gets them done. So, yeah, that is available to you guys and also a discount code for any offerings that you're curious and called to receive. But get those labs is my suggestion.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
yes, we are sending this out to everyone who registered, so you'll get the replay and like a recap. And thank you both, Lene and Dr. Melissa, for joining us. Lauren, thank you so much, Riley.
Thank
Sorry I
you
was late.
Setting this
guys.
up.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Have a
Guys,
great
this was
weekend.
great.
Bye-bye.